Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Rohrbach Brewing Company with a beer garden at the Buffalo Road location, an outdoor space for gathering, games, and brews, weather dependent, open Thursday through Saturday evenings. More at rohrbachs.com.
For WXXI, this is Connections, filling in for Evan Dawson. I'm Gino Finelli. We are continuing our talk about budgets. Every year, with the passage of the New York State budget, we invite elected state leaders to come discuss what is in the budget and what's not. We're also talking about what state leaders want to achieve next. For Republicans, it's always a difficult task in Albany, legislating in the minority. As we learned in our previous conversations with members of both parties, there are disagreements, but also some areas of bipartisan alignment. One significant divide is on the issue of Medicaid. Does New York State cover too many services on Medicaid? If so, what should be cut? And with the federal budget bill including Medicaid cuts, what should New Yorkers be prepared for? This hour, we're joined by Assembly Member Stephen Hawley. He shares his perspective in the budget, from taxes to child care to economic development and more. So, Stephen, thanks for joining us.
It's great to be here. I appreciate the opportunity, and what a beautiful day in Western New York.
I agree. So let's get started and take an overhead view of what you see as the big headlines in this budget. What are some of the standouts, and we'll branch out from there.
Well, the largest, and budgets, by the way, from my point of view, should be all about finances as opposed to programs that are sometimes stuck into the budget just to get passage, as opposed to standing on their own and being voted on by both houses of the legislature. That often happens, regardless of who the governor is, and I would like to see that practice discontinued. But budgets are supposed to be the expenditures and the services that are provided and the receipts that are brought in to cover all those expenditures for all the programs. The largest program in New York State is Medicaid. And we're at this year's budget. The total budget is $254.4 billion with a B dollars, and out of that, Medicaid is $125.8 billion, and represents just about 50%. If you do the math really quickly, you don't have to be an Einstein to see where the largest portion of the budget goes.
So what are some of your bigger disappointments in this budget? What are some of the things that you think are bloated or are programs that are being put forward by the governor that should be voted on separately?
Yeah, I don't have those listings right here, and I really don't remember the budget, of course, was, even though it was late, the budget was passed 5 weeks late after the April 1st constitutional date. So it's quite a while ago. I don't have those programs here, so it's a general comment of relative to that. On the Medicaid funding, our states, every state is required to have Medicaid, and there are a number of optional programs that New York opts into that many other states do not. As I said, the population of New York is about 20 million people. And if you look at Texas, where they have 31 million people, their Medicaid cost is $40 billion versus our 125.8, and that's a 23.7% budget of the total budget spent on Medicaid in Texas. Florida has a population more than ours, 23.4 versus 19.9. They spend $34.7 billion versus our 125.8, which represents about 29.6% of their budget. Only California, which has almost twice the population, actually twice the population that we do, they're at 39.4 million, our 19.9. They spend $188 billion out of their $320 billion budget. So they're at 58% for Medicaid spending, but their population is double ours. We're at 125 in terms of billion. They're at 188 billion. So that's the biggest boondoggle here that I see. And there are certain folks, whether they're the elderly, whether they're those that are disabled, that need to be helped. And I'm all for that. But just so many of the optional programs have bloated this budget beyond belief.
Yeah, you're talking about a very large disparity between us and other states in regards to Medicaid, and I want to get a sense from you. One, do you know how many people are in your district are on Medicaid, and how much that might cost just for your district in the 119th? What that number might be.
Yeah, again, I don't have those numbers. If I look right here quickly, I can tell you how many folks are, what percentage, if you will. Well, there is a report, just so you know, from the Empire Center that indicates that there's a growing over-enrollment in New York's Medicaid program and the Essential Plan. And it would appear to them through their study that 3 million New Yorkers appear to be receiving state-sponsored health coverage from Medicaid or the Essential Plan, despite having incomes above the eligibility limits. That's an issue as well. And of course, that if that is the case, which statistically shows that it is, that would be one of the reasons that our Medicaid budget is so bloated. We really do need to look into that because that harms those that are actually below the income level and need to be receiving Medicaid. So it's a boondoggle around, and we need to really start looking into it. Let me see if I can find the.
Sure.
44% of the state's population is currently receiving Medicaid, which is 20 points higher than the U.S. average and 7 points higher than any other state.
And how? And I think you just kind of touched on this, but how would you account for that, and how would you go about fixing it? Or what could be done to bring down that number in a way that doesn't leave people just, outside the ability to receive medical coverage? How do you reduce that number?
Well, you do it by calculating and studying it, just like any sort of study. You have the right kinds of people with the right kinds of background studying the numbers. And I would assume that would come through. I would prefer to see it come from an independent source as opposed to a governmental source. That way, it would be more, in my opinion, more objective, and the results would be more in line with objectivity to be able to come up with recommendations and real numbers. In New York City, 60% of the population in New York City is on Medicaid or the Essential Plan. And you asked about my district. I don't have those figures specifically, but in New York, Medicaid covers 1 in 4 adults aged 19 to 64. That's 25% across the state. 4 in 9 children, 5 in 8 nursing home residents, 2 in 7 Medicare beneficiaries, and 4 in 9 working age adults with disabilities. It's 57% of the adults in New York are on Medicaid are working, and that's a good thing. But we need to really have more people looking to contribute to their communities and for their families, as opposed to continuing to be dependent on what I've dubbed the drug known as government, addicted to the drug known as government.
So I want to talk about the, one of the requirements in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that just passed in the federal government was a work requirement for Medicaid. And I want to get sense if you support that idea and how would you go about implementing it if it was to be something that was adopted here?
Yeah, run the first part by. You broke up on me a little bit. I apologize.
Sure. The work requirement for Medicaid that was included in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that passed last week, I believe. Would you support that kind of program being operated here in New York, and what would it look like? How would people still be decided to be exempt from that program, and how would you make sure that the people that are required to work are capable of it, and the people that are exempt would be able to still access their Medicaid while still in that age bracket where it is required that you work. So I want to get an idea of whether or not you support the idea and how you would actually effectively put it into practice. Say you're in charge of actually implementing it.
Yeah, I think we've got some time on that, as I understand it, even though I'm not a federal official. And the One Big Beautiful Bill is a federal bill that, of course, will impact New York State and every state in the nation. So I haven't really specifically taken a look at what you're asking about. I generally support if one is able-bodied and of sound mind, actually working and contributing to society. And I think that if this is requiring work of those that are able to, we've got about a year to get that figured out on how it will actually be implemented and how it will, no pun intended, work. Because my understanding is this doesn't take effect until next year. I could be wrong, but that's what I'm led to believe.
So would you support a work requirement for Medicaid?
If you're able-bodied and if you're of sound mind, etc., I would, yes.
Gotcha. So, looking at this entire budget, as a Republican and, being in the minority in the legislature, is there anything that you look at it and say, well, this is good, I like this, or any positive parts of the budget or not? Are there any things that you like about this budget?
Well, there's always something to like about every situation. I'm not a doomsdayer. I'm not everything is half full as opposed to half empty. There are always things that are good. There are a number of deals in the budget that actually were helping people and helping businesses. I can't find them right now with all the paperwork I've got in front of me. Unfortunately, I'm just back from a 4-day wedding down in Canandaigua where my daughter got married, and we had an Indian wedding, and then we had the regular wedding that I was able to officiate at, so I'm not as prepared as I might normally be on this. But yes, there are always things that are positive in every budget. And the way the budget works, just for folks who are listening, the way it works in Albany, and I go back to the day I was elected. I came from county legislative experience, and I still have an occupation. I do have an occupation. I have a source of income. I don't look at government service or public service as a way to solely earn a living. But when I got elected, I came from the county legislature where we had one budget bill, and we would have public hearings on it. And we would work with our staff to come up with something that would be sound, not only for delivery of services, but also for those that have to pay for it, taxpayers. And so when I was elected, it was the beginning of the year. It was February 28th. And, of course, the next month is that month, and the next month are when the budget gets really honed over. And we do, at the state level, hear from many, many, many folks who have a vested interest in where we're going to be providing services and at what dollar amount. So the budget, I don't remember when it was, got presented to the legislature. I was expecting one budget bill. Lo and behold, there ended up, I think, that year being 9 budget bills. And within every budget bill, one obviously is briefed and studies and asks questions about certain portions of those bills. And there are all kinds of good stuff and all kinds of bad stuff in each bill, generally speaking. So one has to determine whether one's going to support a singular budget bill or the next one or the next one or the next one based upon what's in there. And so it was a real eye-opener for me. It became much more difficult, obviously, not only because I was new, but because there were so many items in each bill, and we were briefed on all of them. And so I can remember one bill in particular. We worked very closely with former Majority Leader and now Congressman Joe Morelli on funding for a project in my assembly district through the Empire State Development and we were finally able to secure that with his assistance. And so I voted for that particular budget bill, even though it had probably as many, if not more, negative things from my perspective and who I represent and what kinds of businesses and individuals I have in my district. I voted for that bill because it had that money in there for economic development, even though probably the majority of the bill had some things that I wasn't real comfortable with. So it's the old darned if you do and darned if you don't situation with each of the budget bills, but it does make it more difficult, I think, to vote on each of those bills each year.
So what are some of your key priorities, going into, say, next year's budget? I mean, in a perfect world, what are some of the things that you think New York and the legislature are not, or the governor are not specifically focused on right now, but they should be, they should be investing more in or pulling money away from? We discussed Medicaid quite a bit so far, but, any key standouts of what you think, we're missing or we're over-investing in?
Well, one of the key areas, and I watch Rochester television, and I listen to many of the Rochester, including you, radio programs and stations. And one of the big things that we see, unfortunately, every single day in the greater Rochester area, but specifically in Rochester, is the crime issue. And I know we did some bail reform a number of years ago, and there needed to be bail reform. No question about it. But we've really gone well past reforming and helping individuals who shouldn't have been in jail because they didn't have the money to post to go back out on the streets and become hopefully productive members of society. It's gone to the point where I remember about a year or two ago, there was a carjacking at gunpoint by a youth. And they ended up catching him, and he was given an appearance ticket. He was below the age of 18, an appearance ticket. And the next day, a little over 24 hours later, did the same thing and was given a second appearance ticket. The days of respect for authority, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's educators, whether it's parents or grandparents, has really disappeared from so many parts of our essential communities. And so folks really don't feel safe in their own neighborhoods. 61% is one of the most recent figures that I've been able to come up with. And another 81% find it unbelievably unaffordable to live in our state. We had that mass exodus shown when the last census was done. The results were published about 3 years ago. We lost 1 million people, over 1 million people. And many of them were either senior citizens living on pensions or contributing members, working folks, and or businesses that became fed up with the mandates and the excessive regulations that our state comes up with. Those are the two big items. And, of course, we've got the out-of-touch green energy climate situation going on where in my assembly district, the 139th, which is the entire west side of Monroe County, Hamlin, Clarkson, Whedon, and Wheatland, and all of Orleans and Genesee County, the largest solar farm in the state of New York, 5,800 acres of farmland that grows crops for you and me and everyone else in our state and nation and the world being developed for solar. And that solar, the vast majority of it will be going downstate. So lots of issues in the state of New York that have gone unattended to. And hopefully for next year, it's an election year for governor as well as for the state legislature. So sometimes things that should have been done actually get done in an election year. So we're going to be watching very carefully, and hopefully we can get some of these crime issues, pro-criminal issues taken care of, as well as taking care of eliminating or reducing the amount of unrealistic regulations and mandates for climate control. I'll give you an example, and I'm doing a lot of talking. You're the host, so
No, go ahead.
But I brought down, I won't mention his name, but he was originally from my district, and he had a 35-year career with National Grid. And he called me one day, it was about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, and he said, "Hawley, are you still in the assembly?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm a glutton for punishment." I almost used his name. "I'm a glutton for punishment. I am." And he goes, "What in the world?" And he just retired, by the way. "What in the world is going on with the Climate Control Act that they passed just recently?" And I said, "Well, what are your thoughts?" And he said, "How much time have you got? It's impossible. The grid can't handle it. In my 35 years, there were 3 separate times that the grid almost totally put the entire state in the dark, a blackout, the entire state. We were able to avert it, but it was that close. There is no way that this climate control and the characteristics that are within it can be met." I said, "You want to come down and talk to some folks in Albany?" He said, "I do it in an instant." So I brought him down. I made it available to all 150 members, 149 because I knew I was going to be there, all 150 members of the state assembly, whether they lived in the North Country or they were on Long Island or one of the boroughs in New York City, the Southern Tier, Western New York, all were invited, representing almost 20 million people, each of us having about 133,000 people in our districts. So I invited office or my conference room, if you'd like to do it in person, and ask him questions and listen to what he had to say. Just the facts. And by the way, he also did the gas portion of National Grid, not National Fuel or RG&E, whatever, but the National Grid part. And I made it available by Zoom as well. How many people do you think wanted to hear from someone who actually had real-life experience with energy? How many do you think signed up either by Zoom or came in person?
I'm going to guess you're going to say not very many, so let's say 3.
Would you say 33?
3.
Oh, 3. No, well, you're way under. There's more interest in that. We had, I believe it was 42 people. So, but most of them were from upstate, and we have members from both sides of the aisle. Not too many from the other side, but still. But isn't that a sorry thing? Don't you think that elected officials ought to be investigating and researching before they implement policies that affect their constituents?
I would agree, yeah, and I would think that. Do you think there's a balance there? Do you think do you think there's a need for us to be pulling away from fossil fuels to begin with at this point? And 2, how do you do that if you would support it to begin with? How do you do that in a way that's judicious and fair to the constituents in the state? What does that look like?
Yes, we do need to assure ourselves that the carbon print is being reduced, and part of that is with fossil fuels. I point out that the United States and New York State contribute an infinitesimal small portion of the carbon imprint that we experience, and our country, compared to many, many other countries around the world, whether it's South Africa, whether it's China, South America, we need to be working with other countries around the world as well as our country and our state. So yes, we do need to do that, but we need to do it in a measured way with an eye toward reality and what can actually be accomplished and when it can be accomplished. And that can only be done by, rather than knee-jerk reactions and passing bills that have no basis in terms of facts and the ability to succeed, we need to really be looking into it with studies again, and studies by outsiders not, you can include government as well, but there needs to be a cross-section of society and industries and businesses doing these studies to come up with reasonable and things that can actually be accomplished.
So I want to go back to the crime issue. As this has been a longstanding Republican complaint in New York on one, the Bail Elimination Act of 2019, some of the parole reforms, less is more reforms, and other things of that nature. But if it just a matter of reforms that or these bills that passed over the past half a decade or so that had contributed to what is seen as a spike in crime, and I say what is seen because we did have a spike in violent crime, particularly in Rochester. It's since declined quite a bit. They're still not great. You don't really want anyone to be shot, but it's gone down quite a bit. So two things there. One, are these the only policies that should be pulled back on from your perspective to help alleviate some of the crime issues? Or what else can be done? I mean, is this a matter of law enforcement funding? Is this a matter of court reforms? What do you see as actually something that the legislature can do that could have a tangible effect on violent crime rates across New York?
Well, I think one of the things that the legislature could do is allow our judges to use the dangerousness characteristic with regard to being able to set bail for an individual who is alleged to have done something. That was taken away as part of the bail reform. And if our judges are unable to use that very important descriptive verbiage in ascertaining whether someone should be released back onto the streets, like I just told you about that instance in downtown Rochester, a young man below the age of 18, 2 days in a row, about 24 hours apart, after having been given initially an appearance ticket, at gunpoint, hijacking a vehicle. That's an example of something where I would say that the vast majority of folks would say that's dangerous to society. Gunpoint hijacking of vehicles. So I think a measured approach would be looking at the kinds of things that are part of the bail reform and what's happened in our society as a result of it, including the age of where you can be charged criminally. And in this case, the young man was under the age of 18. He could not be charged criminally because of the change in the age. That's another thing that was done. He can only be charged and held accountable in family court. There were a number of folks in our conference, former NYPD officers, and several other police chiefs from around the state who said, this is just going to be a way for those ne'er-do-wells who are hell-bent, if you will, on either doing harm to others or wreaking havoc in society illegally to recruit young people because they won't be held accountable in criminal court. So there's a couple of examples of things that need to be changed. The dangerousness for judges, being able to use that as a tool to determine whether someone should be released, and that age issue, criminal court versus family court.
Yeah, Stephen Hawley brings up a very good point here that New York is a kind of an oddity that we don't have a dangerousness standard. Virtually every other state does. I believe we're the only one. There may be one other that I'm forgetting, but it is kind of a rare thing. So that is a point that is pretty crucial to this conversation surrounding bail reform and some of the other reforms surrounding criminal justice. We're going to take our first break of the hour, and we're going to be back with Assemblymember Stephen Hawley talking more about the state budget.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from concerts at Point of the Bluff Vineyards, located on Cuca Lake, presenting The Decemberists. The indie folk rock band performs on the lawn with support from Merce Lemon Wednesday, July 23rd. Doors open at 5:30. Tickets at concertsatpob.com. And Mary Cariola Center, providing education and life skills solutions designed to empower individuals and the families of those with complex disabilities. Mary Cariola Center, transforming lives of people with disabilities. More at marycariola.org.
And we are back on Connections, talking with Assembly Member Stephen Hawley about the state budget. One of the things that I want to get to, too, is something the Governor Hochul has touted is free school meals and increasing child care affordability. And I want to get an idea from you on both of them. Do you think these are good ideas or bad ideas? What do you think should be done here? I just want to get some of your thoughts on that.
Well, we certainly don't want any individual of our society wanting for food and good nutrition and enough of it. That's for sure, and especially our young folks who need to be all set and ready to go so that their brains and their internal clock is ready to learn in our schools. If I don't have the figures again, and I apologize in front of me on who the expanded eligibility is good for. The only thing that I want to be sure of is that those folks that are and can be providing good nutrition and enough nutrition for our children in this case are not being offered the free lunch, not free lunch, but free breakfast. That's where I am kind of on that.
And for reference, it's universal is the stipulations put in by the governor on the school meals program. So pretty much every kid would be, not pretty much every kid would be able to access it, and the contractor, which would be the school that provides, is accredited to serve school lunches, would apply for reimbursement from the state on that. So that's how essentially that program would work, and that is what is on the table, that every student in New York State public schools would have access to free meals.
Well, good, and I guess they're generally speaking, the cost would be obviously is increasing. But at the same time, if my child had a good breakfast, I'm thinking that those that are in charge of looking at the numbers in our school districts of participants, not of the eligibility, because it's one thing to be eligible and it's another to partake or participate. If my kids or your kids or anyone else's kids had already had a good breakfast, they're not going to be inclined to partake in that program. So it might be regulated by the individuals whose children are coming to school.
Gotcha. And, a big thing right now, well, before we get to this, I want the expanded child tax credit, too, since we're talking about, child care and affordability. Do you agree with that idea or a bad idea, the child tax credit expansion?
Yeah, I do agree with that. Yep.
Gotcha. So another huge topic of conversation surrounding, I guess, the world now, but is artificial intelligence. And in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, the federal package that just passed, there was a moratorium essentially placed on regulations on AI. Meanwhile, in New York, the RAISE Act, which stands to put some kind of safety protocols on AI, has gone through the Assembly and the Senate. And this is kind of a conversation that has been had a lot surrounding what the future looks like regarding artificial intelligence. And one, it's concerns about social media, how it can manipulate information and things like that. But in other hands, it's about jobs and AI replacing good paying jobs for actual human beings. So I want to start from there. Do you expect or have any concerns about AI replacing jobs in your district?
Yes, of course I do. And since the pandemic, I will just say, because I do have an occupation and a business, I can tell you, and it's regardless of what type of business it is, I think that not only Have we found less folks who are interested in actually working since the pandemic? But if they do work, it's not the same type of production and interest and caring that it was before. Whether you're in agriculture, whether you're in agriculture, whether you're in an office environment, whether it's banking or any other type of finance, whether it's in an assembly line, it is difficult still to find people who are out there looking for jobs. And if you create more, you will, artificial intelligent outlets and possibilities, there's no impetus for our society to become more interested in working. It's already lagging. All we need to do is go through any community, and you know this. You see signs up, posted signs in windows, advertisements on the back of tractor trailers, looking for a good job. We're hiring. You see them everywhere. And so we need to not discourage people or eliminate jobs with artificial intelligence. We need to be able to encourage and to bring folks back into what made this country great, and that's our citizens who give it their all at their jobs. So, yeah, I do think it's a good thing to take a step back, just like the climate control, and take a look at it and see what its implications are, not only today but down the line. I mean, you and I know we can Google anything and ask a question, and the first thing that comes up, it's AI.
AI summary, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, even in my world and what I do, I've been a journalist for about a decade now. And, you know, I go on the local TV news websites and I read an article that's, it reads kind of weird. And then I see in italics at the bottom that it's AI was assisted to create this article. And it does worry me that, you know, my job, which, you know, I
right.
didn't ever think could be replaced by a computer, can be replaced by a computer if they get good enough at it. And I guess there's a couple questions here that kind of branch off of this, but I think top of the line for me is regulation. I mean, do you support us not only stepping back and doing, you know, some studies about what the future might look like for this, but regulating it? And this seems to be the kind of argument that the federal government and the state are having in regards to AI right now. But should we be moving forward with regulation now rather than waiting to see what the future has in store?
Well, yes, and there's no question about that, and that goes right back to the discussion that we had earlier on climate control and the Green New Deal and all of the unrealistic goals. Goals are good, but if they're unrealistic, that gets no one anywhere, and it puts businesses, whether it's National Fuel or others that are providing gas. I mean, I remember long ago, 30 years ago, everybody said we can't do electric anymore because it's so expensive. And we all, not we, but many folks, the majority of folks moved over to either propane or natural gas. And so now here we are, decades later, moving back toward an unrealistic goal of becoming all electric. So it needs to be realistic. It needs to be studied. We need to have realistic goals, but it needs to be based on facts and real figures.
And, you know, you mentioned bringing back these jobs for, you know, good, hardworking Americans to work in New York. But, you know, large corporations that run factories and manufacturing hubs and, you know, things of that nature, they're going to go for the cheapest option because that's how business works. That's how our system works.
Right.
So how do you do that? I mean, how do you make it so there is an incentive for people to, one, hire real human beings, and two, make them good paying jobs that can sustain a good working class in New York and prevent people from leaving here to go to greener pastures in other states? I mean, what does that look like?
Well, it looks like what many of us have been preaching who are in the real world of providing jobs for others and jobs for myself and my family. I was in agriculture for years and years. I was injured on the farm and went to another area and have been working in that area for quite a while now. What we need to do is cut back on it's a familiar refrain from our conference, cut back on the rules and regulations and fees and mandates and taxes, etc., so that businesses not only will stay here as opposed to leaving, but expand here and come here. New businesses or existing businesses being able to operate free and unfettered from over-regulation of a government that is just bound and determined to eliminate so many businesses from expanding and stop them from moving out. I'll give you a typical example, a very obvious example. Chapin Manufacturing in my district, in the city of Batavia, founded 125 years ago. They make Chapin sprayers. They're world-renowned. They do it right here in Batavia. They've expanded a little bit here, but most recently, they expanded not in Batavia, not in Genesee County, not in Western New York, not even in New York State. They went to Tennessee. They went to Tennessee because there were a good, willing workforce. They went to Tennessee because the taxes and the fees and the mandates were far, far less, and it would make for a better paying job for people there as opposed to here because of the costs associated with operating a business. They went to Tennessee. They didn't want to, but with open arms, wide open arms, and thank you for coming here signs everywhere, that's where they ended up going. They've never done that before in 125 years. It's a sad dilemma. But some of our folks in Albany and in the governor's mansion don't seem to want to listen to that.
So we got some questions from my colleagues in the newsroom, and I'm going to start out with one that kind of touches on some of the stuff we were just talking about when it comes to sustainable energy. The governor wants to build a new nuclear power plant, and there has been talks of reconfiguring an old coal plant in Dunkirk. Is that an idea you support, or should we be looking elsewhere? And is nuclear a realistic answer to the real and immediate power shortages we are facing across the state? So what are your stances on nuclear, and would you support the site in Dunkirk as the site for a nuclear power plant?
So it's very, very interesting to now all of a sudden hear the governor and others talk about nuclear energy. It wasn't too long ago where that was an unheard of statement by any member of the majority party. But of course, now as a result of the programs that have been, the bills that have been passed with the climate Green New Deal, recognizing even with all the solar farms and the wind turbines, and by the way, yesterday I was at a press conference in support of a group and many municipalities on the shores of Lake Erie opposed to locating wind turbines in Lake Erie. The same is true in Long Island, where many groups oppose that. And over the years, there have been talk of that in Lake Ontario as well. So it's amazing to now hear the governor and others say, hey, maybe this isn't so realistic, although they don't say it that way. They say maybe we ought to be looking at nuclear. And I agree that if you're going to continue with these unrealistic electrification policies, that yes, we do need to be looking at nuclear. And the folks in Dunkirk and those that represent that area would be the ones that I'd want to talk to first about where it would be located. We do have a number of them throughout the state. And I think that perhaps boutique-type, smaller nuclear facilities for localities throughout the state might be something that we definitely ought to look at.
Yeah, and, it does feel, as you kind of pointed to, that when we're talking about this, like green energy and the future of sustainable energy, nuclear is often left out of the conversation, even though it is a fairly clean source of very bountiful energy. I mean, its biggest byproduct is steam. So Yeah, it is interesting that it is something that's not brought up much in the conversations.
Right, but I think we're, as you just mentioned, now that the governor has actually broached that forgotten word of nuclear that wasn't part of not only her vocabulary but many others. Now maybe we'll see some movement toward that, and I think that's a good thing. We need to have different options for businesses and homes, whether they be big or small businesses or what type of home you live in. We need to have options for folks so that the cost of living and the cost of running a business are realistic.
So another question here from the newsroom. The Assembly Majority Democratic Conference is getting briefed tomorrow on how federal cuts will affect New York. Has there been a similar discussion, or will there be a similar discussion from the Republican side? And where do you think New York should and should not be stepping in? I mean, is there concern on your end about the federal cuts that have been proposed? And is this a conversation you guys are having?
Well, I'm the deputy minority leader in our conference, and at this juncture, we do have a briefing from our Ways and Means Committee staff, and I just got it, and I referenced it earlier. I haven't had a chance to really go over it. It's let's see how many pages. Fairly small font too, I might say. Doesn't matter how many pages. 6 pages. And the analysis is here on tax policy, health and nutrition programs, Medicaid, health and nutrition programs, energy, climate, defense and homeland security, education, student loans, immigration, border security, and again, taxes, Medicaid, and so on and so forth. So I, again, just received this back from that big wedding down in Canandaigua, so I haven't had a real chance. So we've already been briefed in terms of receiving this just yesterday, as a matter of fact. And so if there are questions, we will be entertaining those as a conference separately, obviously, from the majority. By the way, I say that I laughed a little bit. It was a little tongue-in-cheek. Obviously, separately than the majority. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it be pleasant? Wouldn't it be as realistic as possible if we could Zoom or meet and work together on things and listen to others' points of view with respect and maybe come to agreement on some of these very, very important issues that are going to affect every resident and business in the state of New York? It would be refreshing sometimes to have that happen.
Yeah, Stephen, that's real high thinking right there. That's quite a fantasy. It's a nice fantasy, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, what I've done over the years, just to let you know, I invite guys and gals from down in New York City, members of the majority, to come up here and hang out with us in Western New York with me. And I take them around to small businesses. I take them to farms and orchards and to our schools. And I represent SUNY Brockport and Genesee Community College. They hang out with me a couple of days up here. I let them ride on my lawnmower. I put them up in a combine, let them go to a winery, but not let them drink too much. And then we're developing relationships with individuals opposite sides of the aisle, but creating a give and take. And I'm not going to use any names, but I can only tell you that one of the individuals that I had up here was so impressed, if you will, because he'd never been up here. He's the chair of one of our committees. He's a very good friend of mine as a result of not only him coming up here, by the way, I should say, it's an exchange program that I've initiated. I go down there being New York City, either the boroughs or Long Island, and I hang out with those guys and gals for a day or two and learn who they represent, what their districts are like, and it does create that interpersonal relationship with individuals so that the rancor and the shaking of fingers and pointing of fingers doesn't occur quite as much. And he is a chairman of a committee. I had a constituent who had issues with his children, and I asked if he would talk with my constituent, just a regular Joe, regular Joan, and he did. And he's done that over and over. And I just had I just had kids come up from the Oakfield, Alabama school district in Genesee County who were taking a civics class. They made a presentation to Senator Borrello and myself on the relationship between drugs and mental health issues. And they made this presentation, and I said to them, why don't you guys come down to Albany? Make the same presentation to members of the mental health committees in the Senate and the Assembly, and to the drug and alcohol addiction committees in the Assembly and the Senate. They did. They came down 2 weeks before the end of session, and there were 7 kids in the class. They paid their own way. And not only did we give them a tour of the Capitol and the History Museum, but they also made a presentation to the chair people as well as the ranking members of both of those committees. The members of the majority, the chairs, all chairs are members of the majority, actually came over and listened and talked to the kids. And the next week we had a joint press conference on the relationship and the things we need to do between addiction and mental health issues. So we need more of this, I believe. It's about people and the people that we represent.
Yeah, no, I would entirely agree. And, as a New Yorker and someone who loves this state, man, I would rather you guys get to work together and stop just fighting over nothing and do stuff for the people that actually live here. So that's my my position. But this has been Stephen Hawley from the 119th District talking about the state budget. Stephen, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure. Have a great day.
You too.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited.